All right, welcome everybody to the August edition of this Every Second Matters podcast. We get together on the second day of each month and we talk about Second Amendment issues. We try to keep awareness of the Second Amendment alive and kicking. So, along with the website, everysecondmatters.com, we get together like this on the second day of each month and do a podcast. Right now, we're running it on the Gun Website's YouTube channel. We'll be watching the comments coming in there. We're also simulcasting it over at gunchannels.com, and we'll be watching the live comments that are coming in there as well. Tonight we've got Brandon jumping in from FPC, Firearms Policy Coalition out of California. Thanks for jumping in.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on again.
You bet. And then we got Smeggy jumping in from Michigan, who's host of the Hit or Miss podcast on Tuesdays, as well as our Daily Gun Show on weekdays at 7 p.m.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Good night, gun lobby.
All right, so as I say, we get together on the second. We got links out to a lot of different people. The second falls on a different day of the week each month, so it's always kind of a random mix of who's going to show up. We got links out though, and if you're interested in joining and being part of the discussion, ask us over on the Gun Channel side, and we can send some links out to you there. But with all that being said, it is August, and we usually talk about what we've done for the second this month, if anything, and then Smeggy usually spends some time putting together some of the stuff that's been going on over the last month. Where do we want to start?
Well, I'll say just at least for, me personally, stuff that I've done recently for just kind of Second Amendment type stuff. And this is more dealing with people kind of in the middle, maybe not gun people, trying to, convince them that maybe they should pay attention to stuff a little bit more. And one of the things if anyone knows me, I used to argue. I had an anti-gunner I used to work with. He just retired this past month. So I don't know what I'm going to do when I'm at work because I don't have anyone to argue with anymore. And that's going to be troublesome for me. But anyways, everyone at work knows me as like kind of the gun guy because they'd hear me arguing with this other dude. And I was approached by this guy I work with saying, hey, me and my wife are thinking of getting a gun, for kind of home protection or just take to the range and have fun also. What should I get? So I said, well, let's go to the range because that's always fun to do. And then I'm kind of helping him get his first gun. And so hopefully that will be a new ally for the Second Amendment. And I think that kind of work can be done, any day and with just regular people, just show them that, hey, gun people aren't crazy. They're not, rednecks or conspiracy theorist people. We're just regular people who happen to enjoy something. And, it's important to us. So other than that, I mean, I didn't necessarily do any other specific Second Amendment type stuff other than my normal day-to-day just being a gun person.
Hey, we got Yankee in here. So, hey, Yankee, we're just starting off the show with kind of the traditional, what'd you do today? What'd you do this month? Every Second Matters wise.
Not much. I did. It is the second, so I did open carry, but then still open carrying. I don't know if you can see it, but right there.
Now, you were around back in the beginning of all this, so that was one of the things that we kind of debated. Let's do something together as like an organization or an awareness campaign. That way, if somebody somewhere is open carrying and they get confronted, they can say, "Oh, I'm doing this as part of a big campaign." And then I guess it kind of got I don't want to say shot down, but everybody said there's too many states where that could be an issue. So then it turned into wearing a shirt. But that's one of the things that you started doing right off the bat and continue to do, right? You don't normally open carry, but you open carry on the second. Oh, now you're muted.
Yeah, that's about the only time I do open carry is during Every Second Matters. A lot of people think I don't do it anymore because I don't put out a video every second about what happens, but usually nothing happens. So I don't make a video. Like today, nothing happened. Of course, I went to 2 different gun shops. I went to Sportsman's Warehouse. I went to a Cerakoter, and I went to a gunsmith. So, all places where you wouldn't expect to get harassed. Although I did stop at Lamps Plus too, and I noticed a couple people look, but no one said anything. So I'm muting myself when I'm not talking because I got my air running. It was 111 degrees here today, so.
I'm not sure if G-Webs is talking or not. I don't hear him, but I did want to mention that is one of those, like, you know, no news is good news kind of thing. Like, if you're open carrying and there's no problems, that's a good thing.
And that's why I don't do a video every time, because 90% of the time nothing happens unless I get thrown out of someplace like IKEA or somewhere. I don't make a video.
Well, maybe you should start running around when you're open carrying and walking in circles and stuff and being all suspicious. So then the cops show up and then you can make one of them videos. Am I being detained? Am I free to go? You don't know my rights, man.
No, at my age, if I go out somewhere and start wandering around in circles, I end up getting put in a home.
Well, hopefully Jules will come right back. He has been having a little bit of internet issues.
Is he in his van?
Yeah, he's in the mobile command center.
No, I guess Wi-Fi is not so good down by the river.
There we go. Now he's back.
Yeah, I'm a little trouble with that internet.
Yeah, I wanted to stop in tonight. I don't get to stop in very often. I've always got something going on every night, but we're not skating tonight because I'm sure the skating rink would be sweltering hot since they don't have traditional air conditioning. So,
Well, I got cut out there, but I was asking before about your open carrying because you don't normally open carry. I was going to ask, you kind of answered it already, but is there any difference when you open carry compared to when you don't? And you mentioned that you went to a bunch of gun shops and stuff, but even then, let me ask when you open carry, I don't know if you pay attention, but I'm assuming most people in your area do not open carry. Most people are concealed carrying.
It's not common here, but I can't really notice a difference because it doesn't feel any different to me because I carry in the same manner that I normally carry. I just don't wear like a Dickies shirt over to my t-shirt. So I often forget that I'm open carrying. I mean, I'll go through the whole day and at the end of the day be like, oh yeah, I've been open carrying all day.
Okay, so it's not like you change your method of carry, like all of a sudden you're carrying a shoulder holster where normally it wouldn't be, and then so it's awkward for you or something.
Right here at about 3:30, just like it always is, in an outside waistband holster.
But the point isn't just to do it, it's to do it. Well, I guess what I was getting at is even though there's a bunch of people that don't really care, they didn't get upset or anything, at least they saw you doing it and they thought to themselves, huh, and they saw that shirt, probably you were wearing that shirt around.
Yeah, and I often get people say positive things to me while I'm open carrying, especially like the gun shop when people be like, "Oh, nice gun" or something. But then and I have people sometimes will ask me things like, "What do you have to have a special license to carry like that in Washington?" I'm like, "No, that's one thing you can do without a license is open carry."
Yeah, right there. Well, that's all it's all about, right? Awareness and starting conversations. So we had Darts and Tony jump in from Chattanooga and kind of just starting out the show with what do we do the month today, if anything.
Hello.
Yep, we hear you.
So did you do anything special today and or this past month, Second Amendment related?
I just picture Darts and Tony talking into his mouse because he's not quite sure. He's old, so he's not quite sure what he's supposed to do.
I know, it's funny because I have this new microphone and I don't know if it works or not. So
We got you, loud and clear.
were you asking me, Smeggy, or
Yeah.
Yankee? Well,
I'll
I've been
collecting
these things. I don't know. I've been trying this little project to try to inspire myself to get out more and do things. My little project, my new little project to try to inspire myself to get out more, to be more out from behind the computer. It's part of my weight loss program. to also be more Pro 2A active and also lose weight at the same time. So I've been collecting stuff for my giveaway, and today I got the two shotguns, one of them which I'm going to give away. So anyway, I don't know if you want to hear about all that, but
You should do
yes,
you could do a 2A march across America. That way you could lose weight from walking from coast to coast.
that would kill me, but that would probably work.
And all the press you'd get, though.
Yeah.
About 6 miles a day, so I don't know how long that would take me.
Yeah.
Dying for the Second Amendment. So
Would Bloomberg classify that as a gun death, though?
Well, we didn't say, yeah, it probably would be a gun death. That was a violent gun death when he had his heart attack. Milepost 7.
it's funny.
We didn't say how far you had to walk every day. It could be like 3 miles a day.
Oh.
Right. So we were just going around, and as people jump in, we'll kind of do that. That's one of the things we've been doing now for the last few years. As we do the monthly show, is just talk about what individuals' efforts people have done. It's always interesting things. So it's it'd be fun to hear what people are saying. So if you're out there planning on jumping in, let us know. Otherwise, I know Smeggy's got some stuff, and Brandon's obviously always working. So you guys can tell us about what's been going on.
Yeah, that's one of the things. I don't know if Brandon's ready, but I wouldn't mind kind of hearing some of his stuff. I know he does a lot of work with like legislative or not legislative, but like in the legal system, right? Like court system type stuff. So I'd be interested to hear that, or if not, I can do my stuff either way.
Well, I am here at your disposal, everybody. So happy to jump in, or happy to wait a minute and jump in a minute.
Well, I'd like to start with you then. What kind of stuff you've been working on?
Well, this past month and a half has been a whirlwind for a lot of reasons. Starting with some good news, the DC Circuit recently ruled that the district's good cause or just cause requirement for carry licenses there in the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C. was unconstitutional. And not only did they say that it was unconstitutional, but this was an appeal from preliminary injunctions, or I should say from motions for preliminary injunctions. One district court granted a preliminary injunction and the other one denied. And so in a consolidated effort between two cases, the lead case being Wren versus DC, backed by the Second Amendment Foundation and the great folks there, and helmed by the outstanding civil rights attorney Alan Gura, who won Heller and McDonald and many other cases like Ezell. The DC Circuit said that the just cause requirement was unconstitutional, and then instead of remanding the case for further proceedings or what would be sort of a typical response, the DC Circuit said, well, since we've reached this conclusion, just go ahead and issue, lower court, district court, go ahead and issue a permanent injunction against this and be done with it. So it was definitely unique in that respect that from a motion for preliminary injunction, the circuit court said, well, not only are you right that the just cause requirement is unconstitutional, but we're just going to go ahead and say that's it. We're done here. We're done talking about it. So that was very unique. And I think that on one hand, that's very significant and an extraordinary win for civil rights, but also for the Second Amendment Foundation team and Alan Gura. The bigger picture here is now what, right? So you've got the Seventh Circuit, the case out of Illinois from a number of years ago now, Moore versus Madigan, saying that the state of Illinois' carry ban was unconstitutional. Then you've got other circuits in other cases like Drake out of New Jersey in the Third Circuit saying that basically the same thing that DC just found, the DC Circuit just found to be unconstitutional was just fine. The Ninth Circuit, obviously everybody's aware of Peruta, and the in-bank decision there that said that the good cause requirement didn't really infringe Second Amendment rights. So, you know, too bad, so sad. And now there's this other decision out there saying what I think is very clearly something unique, in that not only did it say that carry was a right, but that those kinds of restrictions do amount to a de facto ban. And so the next question is DC going to petition for an in-bank rehearing there in the DC circuit? I would almost sort of suspect that they will. President Obama definitely changed the makeup of that court during his presidency, and so then you've got judges like Judge Janice Rogers Brown, probably one of the best judges in the country, taking senior status. There's a lot of sort of things going on there. So what might happen out of DC is that the DC circuit does the same thing that the Ninth Circuit did, and take the case in bank and vacate the panel decision, the good one, and say something very different, or perhaps something along the lines of what the Ninth Circuit said in Pruda, which the in-bank decision was not, as everyone knows, not very good for Second Amendment rights. That does sort of, you know, set up for Supreme Court review again, although it sort of pushes things out for another year, maybe year and a half, potentially longer than that, but probably not. So then, you know, I'm saying this while I'm talking about the good news, right? So some people might ask, what the hell are you talking about? Why would that be good news? The answer is, and I think we talked about this last time, was that I think the real big picture look at this is that we probably need President Trump to nominate, you know, one or two more Supreme Court justices that are along the same lines as a Justice Gorsuch before we see big movement, particularly on the big Second Amendment issues like carry. And even though there is some risk that the DC Circuit, sua sponte or on its own, or whether it's petitioned by the District of Columbia itself, that it takes it in bank and rules adversely to Second Amendment rights, that might buy some time for you know, potentially some retirements to take place, and additional nominees to be sent to the Senate by President Trump, and maybe even confirmed. So I think that the next set of confirmation hearings for the next Supreme Court justice, whomever that might be, is going to be a lot more contentious than even Justice Gorsuch's nomination process. I do think that that's ultimately probably a good thing for the long run, if that makes sense.
Let's. Yeah, I had a question. If we can go back a little bit, when they do those panel decisions versus like the full, like en banc decision, how do they pick which judges are like just the three? They draw names out of a hat, or do they be like, oh, I want to do that one? Like, do they get to pick? How does that work?
If you're talking about the panel selection process, I mean, basically, it can be even, it can be supposedly randomly selected from a pool of judges that are qualified, including some district court judges sitting by designation. So, for example, you might have a district court judge that's eligible to serve on an appeals court panel. And so sometimes you'll see that in cases where it'll say circuit judges, you know, Jane Doe and John Smith, and judge, you know, district judge John Smith, you know, sitting by designation or something like that.
Not to be a pessimist or to throw a wrench in the works, though, but the random judge selections for these types of hearings are about as reliable as the secret grand jury selections.
Well, Having lived through it a number of times over the past decade and change, I certainly understand why you would say that, and I can't personally disagree that sometimes it feels awfully non-random.
Yeah, California has a very good way of always selecting the judges that agree with the state whenever they have to do this.
Well, keep in mind that it's not California. The Ninth Circuit, in fact, the chief judge of the Ninth Circuit is from Montana, and he was the guy who wrote the anti-gun opinion, the anti-gun dissenting opinion in the original Peruta three-judge panel opinion, as well as a number of other cases, including a case called Sylvester, and so I mean, random or not, certainly get it, but it's not California. Probably one of the most anti-gun circuit judges in the entire United States came from Montana.
Yeah, but talking the cases that came from California always seem to somehow end up with the right judges when they get to the back of the bare of the bone.
Maybe, but think about things a slightly different way. You're not going to get states like Arizona, for the most part, arguing anti-gun positions. The Second Amendment's not going to be decided in Idaho. It's not going to be decided in places like, for the most part, Texas. Obviously, some cases did come out of Texas, but I mean, in general, you're going to see the Second Amendment, and you're going to see the judiciary tell you what it means, whether or not we agree with it, from places that have historically not had a state constitutional right to keep and bear arms. California is one of the very few states that never, according to the California Supreme Court, had a right to keep and bear arms in its state constitution. So it gave them, 150 years to make a bunch of anti-gun laws. That's where you're going to see these cases come from. You've seen them come out of Illinois. You've seen them come out of New York, Connecticut, Maryland, Hawaii. There's a reason for that.
I'm not sure you're understanding what I'm saying. I'm saying that the actual process by which the random judges are selected is not actually random. It's often very politically driven and very politically manipulated.
Well, perhaps, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I think I was trying to make that point earlier, but what I was saying is you keep assigning that to a state, and this is much bigger than
the state cases are just an example of how it plays out when it comes time that it has to be, when it doesn't work out legally the way they want it to, suddenly this randomly selected new panel of judges comes in and decides the way they want them to.
Well, and keep in mind, the Ninth Circuit is also kind of unique because it's so large. There's a lot of judges. There's a lot of people inside of the circuit. Most circuits, when it sits in bank, it actually does literally do just that. Every judge is up, right? But in the Ninth Circuit, it's so big that it can't do that. And generally, it refuses to. So just like in the Fourth Circuit, there's a case that was recently petitioned to the Supreme Court on assault weapons and magazines called Colby versus Hogan. And that was another case where the Fourth Circuit three-judge panel issued a great decision and said, the assault weapons laws are unconstitutional. Strict scrutiny should apply because we're talking about arms in common use for lawful purposes, and we're talking about good guys and not bad guys. So the full scope of the Second Amendment applies. And but then that went in bank, and as we all know, the Fourth Circuit issued some outrageous holdings in its decision, which basically was, was about as anti-gun as you can get. So, I'm hearing you, and I'm certainly sympathetic with the feeling that it's not as random as it might purport to be. But I also think that what we're really seeing is we're seeing decades of appointments to judgeships, federal judgeships and circuit judgeships, that go back to Carter. And that's what we're really seeing here is, if you're looking at it from these cases coming out of California, it only seems to work this way. Well, that's because the cases are coming out of California. But mainly what you're seeing is the result of people's voting over the past 40 some odd years, coming back to bite civil rights.
Yeah, but I guess one of the things that I give at least some little ray of hope is like when you look at something like Peruta, is that at least when they just had the smaller panel, they actually did decide the correct way. So there's at least a couple of good judges in the Ninth Circuit.
Well, there certainly are, and Judge O'Scanlan, who was the judge who wrote that good three-judge panel decision in Peruta, also wrote a great panel decision in a case called Teixeira versus Alameda, another case that I've been involved with from the beginning, and that's another case that went in bank, which, you know, it is what it is. We got to deal with it. But and also one other thing that a lot of people don't know, and some people might have forgotten, is that Judge O'Scanlan was also the guy, and Don Kilmer was the attorney on this, in a case called Nordyke versus King, a case that was litigated for, I think, 12 or 13 years by the time it was done. Judge O'Scanlan's panel decision in Nordyke versus King was the first one to incorporate the Second Amendment against the states and local governments through the 14th Amendment's due process clause. So before McDonald, there was about a 6-month window of time in which the Second Amendment applied to Californians and Hawaiians and everybody in the Ninth Circuit through this case, this opinion called Nordyke. And eventually that decision was stayed pending the outcome of McDonald. But during that time, in 2009, that's when we filed the case of what was then called Sykes versus McGinnis. That was the first carry case outside of DC in the nation. And we also filed Pena versus Sid. It's now called Pena versus Lindley, which is a case challenging the California handgun roster as unconstitutional. So we had this real narrow slice of time to file cases even before McDonald, because this case called Nordyke said that the Second Amendment applied to the states and local governments, and so we took advantage of that. And those were two of the first Second Amendment cases outside of D.C. after Heller, all because of Judge O'Scanlan.
So, what do you see coming up in the future? Like, are there any cases that might be popping up sometime soon, or is most stuff kind of on the back burner for right now, or like what's the future for the Second Amendment in the next month or next couple months?
Well, on the legal side of things, I think that there's quite a bit of activity. There's Colby recently petitioned out of the Fourth Circuit to the Supreme Court, and that's an assault weapon and magazine case. There was a petition filed about just under 2 months ago called Hamilton versus Polazzi, I believe is how you say it. That was a case out of the Fourth Circuit. The Fourth Circuit's really turning into about as hostile of a circuit as the Ninth, which was interesting because prior to President Obama, the Fourth Circuit was thought of to be a fairly conservative circuit. But anyway, that's a case kind of like the Binderup versus Sessions and Sessions versus Binderup cases out of the Third Circuit that the Supreme Court denied. But in this case, the Fourth Circuit said that people who committed crimes that may be prohibiting a long time ago, and even though they weren't violent crimes and they've been exemplary citizens since, they have no right to keep and bear arms forever, doesn't matter. Again, that was a case backed by Second Amendment Foundation and helmed by Alan Gura. Great case. So we're watching that. The Supreme Court called for a response in that case. And that's a really good sign. It doesn't mean that they're going to take it, but it does mean they're paying attention and they want to know the other side of the story. And I think that's a really good indicator that they're at least taking a real hard look at that case. So definitely crossing my fingers that that goes. That could be a great case for them to take a look at. Another case that was recently petitioned to the Supreme Court is called Norman out of Florida about carry. There's an awful lot of activity. I've got a Supreme Court petition that'll be filed in just about a month from now. So definitely no back burner. It's full steam ahead. And I would expect to see a few more cases filed over the next few months.
Campus
California stuff, the Gunmageddon and the repercussions from that. I've noticed that there's been there's so many of those initiatives that it's tough to keep track of all the reporting on them. But there's been a lot of, I think there's been discussion on more than one of them.
Well, I'll stop and listen to the plane.
I guess I could have muted it. There's been a discussion on more than one of them where they passed the law and then, oops, how do we enforce this? Or oops, is that constitutional? So my question is, with all the Gunmageddon stuff, how do you keep track of it? Is it like a big whiteboard where you just keep track of how this one was a dead end, or this one's on its way, or this one we got 2 years before we have to worry about it? Or, I mean, it's got to be a unique situation keeping track of all these conclusions.
Well, indeed, and in addition to everything in California, we're tracking literally hundreds of bills across the country and in Washington D.C. and trying to game out a few different ways to move some of those pieces around. So on that side of things, yeah, it's a lot of spreadsheets. Anybody who does not like Excel probably wouldn't like working for me.
Oh, dang it. I was going to apply, but we all know I hate spreadsheets.
Well, it is tough, and there's a lot, and we've literally had to do some a little bit of everything and a lot of everything. I mean, there's where you literally have to go line by line between a ballot initiative and multiple bills and compare what even as part of the magazine challenge, there are literally two different sets of live laws with the same number that have two very different values to law-abiding gun owners. And so it's a mess. I think the entire state of California should be concerned. I think anybody should be concerned when there's this much confusion, potential for confusion and actual confusion out there. When you've got, cops on the street, whether or not they're pro-gun, those are the guys ultimately that are going to have to decide on the spot whether to hook you up and take you for a ride or not. And anybody who says, oh, well, they won't do that, I would suggest that you should take a look at the criminal court docket for the past 20 years. They've been doing it. They're going to continue doing it. There is a real risk there. Now,
yeah, that's it. And that's the thing. I forget what the heck law it was, but something they were trying to pass, and everyone was like, oh man, this would be bad because, you might, catch some people that technically would be breaking this law, but, everyone agrees they're not bad people. I think it was one of the, the background check, transfer things. Technically, if you hand the gun to your neighbor, you just broke the law, even if he's going to hand it right back to you because he's just looking at it. And their thing was oh, well, yeah, just trust us. We're not going to do that kind of stuff. And it's well, if you're not going to do that kind of stuff, how about you change the wording of the law so it doesn't include that kind of stuff? You're the one that put that in there. And when people point it out, it's yeah, we'll keep it in there, but just trust us. We won't actually do it.
Well, that reminds me of when after Sandy Hook in 2013, Senator Steinberg, then the president of the California Senate, had a whole package of gun control bills, assault weapon magazines, everything you can think of. There's a ton of bills. It was one of the longest hearings I've ever been in my life. It was all day. It was a total dog and pony show. They bust in people to testify from UC Davis Medical School, which happens to be Bloomberg and Joyce funded, and I mean, like, it was an awful dog and pony show. And one of the things that came up during that was there were a few sheriffs that were sort of, they like to think of themselves as constitutional sheriffs, even though they had some of the most outrageous carry license policies in the state. They really thought that they were like, super conservative, super libertarian, constitutional sheriffs. I happen to know better because I'd been dealing with them for years. And so after they got done testifying and they said, hey, committee, we're not going to enforce these laws. This goes too far. We're done. We're not going to do this. We're not going to enforce your laws for you anymore. Then they got done and they were walking back to the hallway. And I stopped them, and I won't name them. And I said, hey, that was great. Really support what you said. Appreciate that you said it. Now, how about the fact that you've been doing that for the past 20 years? When were you going to stop doing that? Because I keep getting those calls from law-abiding gun owners, people that are good people getting hurt by the existing laws that you're enforcing, that your office is enforcing, that your officers are arresting them for, ruining their lives for. When were you going to stop doing that? Obviously, I didn't get much of a response to that question.
Well, I guess while we're on this topic, since we're talking California, I'm going to cross one off my list of something that happened in the past month, or at least since the last Every Second Matters, and that's basically the Office of Administrative Law officially approved the GOJ's proposed bullet button assault weapon regulations. And the thing that's, I think, noteworthy is they turned the regulations down twice. This is the third time that they submitted it. Now, all of a sudden, it's approved. And basically, there's no changes between this one that just got approved and the one that they shot down, a week ago or 2 weeks ago or whatever. I forget exactly when it was shot down last. But that's something noteworthy that they did actually finally say, all right, we approve these regulations on, the so-called bullet button assault weapons. Which is dumb that they're calling them bullet buttons because, as soon as they do that, everyone's taking their bullet buttons off because they give no advantage,
Well, so to stop you there, and obviously we're looking at this stuff very closely. One of the things I've been doing, ever since then, and prior to that, and I also have a lot of other attorneys and other people, they say in the regulations that people cannot take their bullet buttons off. So there's a lot of problems with this. I will tell you that the past year has shown the OAL regulatory process really just needs to be a drinking game. It's really bad. We're obviously going to be working on that in different respects. And that's about all I can say, other than we were pretty floored at how, just from appearances, this looks awfully corrupt. It looks awfully political.
Oh, really? You think so? And I'm speaking as a complete, novice, just regular person, just glancing at it.
Well,
But,
that's that's the point, right? I mean, all of this is supposed to be about the guy on the street is supposed to understand the law and supposed to be able to track this stuff and understand the process as well. And it's really hard to fathom, and it's really hard to stomach what just happened, but it's outrageous. We are really pissed off, and you will see a lot of things about that over the next year and sooner. And the Office of Administrative Law has proven that they are not the objective civil servants that we had hoped that they would be, and we will respond accordingly.
yeah, well, it's something you said that I hadn't realized is something about you can't take your bullet button off. That seems crazy because even from everything I read was that you have until July 1st of 2018 to either register, I'm using giant air quotes, assault weapons, or make them compliant of not being assault weapons. And so I would think if you took the bullet button off and then got rid of all your features, you've now complied with it's not considered an assault weapon because you got rid of all of its features. And then you can still have the detachable magazine. But it's interesting if you can't. You can't do that. Like that, it says you're supposed to, but then if people take the bullet buttons off, now they're going to get in trouble.
Well, I mean, what they're saying in the regulations is once it's registered as a quote bullet button assault weapon, that it magically becomes a new category of assault weapon that doesn't exist in the statutes, and you can't take the bullet button off that registered.
Once you register it. So basically, as long as you make the changes right now, then you don't have to register and it's fine. But if you register it by July 1st, 2018, and then later you decide, you know what, it'd be better if I just got rid of this pistol regular mag release on. They won't let you do that.
Well, so there's a couple of different, that's kind of a loaded question because it's important to be precise. I'm gonna split that off into two different things. One is the regulations do have a process for deregistering a registered assault weapon. Now, I don't think that exists in the statute necessarily, but that's something to deal with later. The question is really, once you have a registered assault weapon, then how do you have a more assaulty assault weapon? If you have a registered bullet button assault weapon, it is a registered assault weapon for the purposes of the law. That is effectively an exemption from the criminal statutes saying, well, it's illegal to do A, B, and C, but if it's registered, then that's fine. How do you have a more assaulty assault weapon simply because you take your bullet button off? I'm not sure I understand the DOJ's legal argument or logic there, but perhaps that'll be something that will be explored.
Is it possible there just is no logic there? Because we are talking California, so
well,
don't rule that out.
Oh no, I hear you. I think that I think it'll be a fascinating thing to talk about in court. So I think that there's a handful of other things, and I don't want to, as I did last time, I'm not going to kill your entire show, and thank you for your patience as I sort of run through these things. But there's a lot of stuff coming up. I would say on the legal front, you're going to see a lot of activity over the next 18 months. It's not going to slow down, that's for sure. Hopefully the Supreme Court will take one or more cases at some point, and that's really what we want. And obviously for them to decide in our favor. On the legislative front, we were talking last time a bit about Washington D.C. Congress and some of the stuff back there. I am very concerned that what I thought would be the easiest things to deal with in DC have no chance after the healthcare debacle that went down here recently. I think that if I'm a gun owner in any state, in any city and county or parish in the entire United States, I think I would probably take a hard look at what my credit cards could handle and fly to DC and walk around for a day or two and pound on the tables. I would definitely be calling and writing. If you go to firearmspolicy.org/act, you'll find all the bills there. You can send letters that way. I would definitely do that. I would definitely be making phone calls. And I would think very hard about going to DC and reminding them that they work for us, and that if they're the swamp that needs to be drained, then maybe that's what we got to do. But I really think that from a grassroots perspective, between our last conversation and this one, that's probably one of the most important things that I could suggest is it's time to ramp up the grassroots. You need to be calling Speaker Ryan and Senate Leader McConnell and reminding them that we put them in office and they're in leadership to move our bills. And after the healthcare thing, I think that's one thing that everybody needs to think about. Doesn't matter if you're in a free state or not. If you want to see progress in the next 20 years, your next 18 months are going to be really, really, really important.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. It's, I think, important to remember is that some of this stuff does take time. I know a lot of people, because we talked about in some of the past Every Second Matters, was that like, okay, Trump win, we're all going to have, all of our gun rights are coming back tomorrow. Everything's fine. I'm going to bed. And that doesn't happen unless you fight for it. So even when everything looks like it should be going your way, you still have to fight to be the top priority. And if they don't think that the gun owners care or whatever, then they're not going to focus on that. So I will echo your statement of you got to talk to your peoples and say, you work for me. This is why I voted for you. Do this. And if you don't, I'm voting for someone else who will. And hopefully they'll scare them enough to say, okay, I better go do something.
Well, I would like to be talking and doing one of these Every Second Matters shows from DC sometime this year. I think it's that important. I think it's time. I wasn't really joking when I said that gun owners need to take a look and see what they can do. If you can take a few days off and go to DC, go to the district offices, right? Definitely get on the phone, definitely send letters and emails. But if you can go to the district office of your representatives, your senators, and your House member, and better yet, go to DC. Show up. If you can show up, now's the time. Because I don't know that you're going to get another shot to do this again. Maybe not in our lifetimes. And I guess with that, I will I will stop and thank everybody for the time and the opportunity to chat again.
Yeah, definitely, man. Thanks for joining. I always enjoy your insight, and so I guess I'll move over to.
I had to wait for a plane to go by again, but I want to add that I appreciate the time because obviously there's bulletins. You guys put out alerts when there's something important, or when there's a reminder of something that's got a imminent, due date or something. And when you send out an alert like that, you have to, let people know what the deal is, and then give them a call to action, and then people are going to get these things. And because there's an onslaught of attacks against the second, there's a lot of these things going out. So I know that it can get lost, and people can start to get blurry from it all. And by having you on here to actually talk about it in conversation, I think it
Well, I'm not sure if there's an internet problem or if it's on my side.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say I thought it was me because I just moved my computer, but yeah, he's having some issues with his little portable Wi-Fi thing.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. Of course, I appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat, and always happy to do it. I think that shows like this are important because the gun owner that really needs to hear this is going to be here. They're going to be in your universe. They may not be in ours, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak with the audience and share our viewpoints and hopefully provide some value to the community at large. Look, we're going to be ramping up some stuff that we'll stay in contact and stay in touch and talk about that some more over the next month or two. But
Well, you always know the date of when to come back, so
well,
it's always an open invite. But let me just ask this then, for the people out there listening, where is the best way to keep track of the stuff that you're doing? Like, what's the website or whatever people could go to and keep up with it?
if you just want to pay attention and stay involved, go to firearmspolicy.org. Firearmspolicy.org. You can take a look at the bills there. You can kind of follow along all of these things in the news. You can sign up for email or not. Obviously, I think that it's perfectly reasonable to say, hey, you know what? I have an overload of gun news. I get it. I really do get it. Trust me. If there's, I really understand how much is going on and how overwhelming that can be. But I want to tell you, the next 18 months are probably going to be some of the most important times in the history of the Second Amendment, in the entire history of the Second Amendment. And I really think that, gun owners, drink a Red Bull or a Monster or whatever you need to do, juice up, to get energized for the next 18 months and be ready to fight. The real fight is right in front of us. And I think that if we can do that successfully as a grassroots, I think we can still make some progress. But if you're going to be sitting at home expecting other people to do the work for you, I think you're going to be grossly disappointed with the results. So 18 months, step up, spend the energy, spend the money, fight it out, leave nothing on the table, and let's see what we can get done.
All right, that sounds good. You back with us now, G-Webs?
Yeah, just in time for that C-130 to go to another flyby.
What are you doing? Sleeping at the airport or something?
I'm hanging out next to the boat. They're flying a C-130 around in the middle of the night. I don't know why.
All right, guys. Thanks again.
Oh yeah, no problem. All right, well, I guess I'll jump in then on some of the stuff that's happened at the state level throughout the past month. We already covered that one California thing.
I don't know how much did it cut off everything I was saying there about just thanking them for being coming in and having a conversation so we could.
Yeah, we did hear all of that. Yep. So it makes it more clear, rather than all these, emails and stuff, and you get a gun overload. So, yeah, you kind of cut off mid-sentence, but I think the major point got across. So, all right, well, I'm going to jump in here then. Like I said, I did do the one California thing, which is the regulations. Oh, crap, what tab was that? Dang it. This one. Okay. Something else happened on July 19th in California. Assembly Appropriations passed the dealer storage bill. And then they sent the one gun a month bill to suspends. So that is basically, it got sidelined, but it can be brought back up like at any time before, I think it said like the September deadline. So basically the one gun a month thing, which is now suspended, so it's okay, it's off table a little bit, but they already have, you can only buy one handgun a month, and they want to change that to be, you can only buy one firearm a month. So it would now include long guns as well, which I think is just ridiculous. But luckily that got pushed aside a little bit. The mandatory storage thing, however, it did pass from the committee, so now it's going out to a regular vote, and that basically further increases the mandatory storage and security requirements for licensed firearms dealers. So I guess they figure gun shops aren't locking their guns up enough, so now there's going to be even more regulations on what they have to do. So that's just, honestly, it's probably just going to be more costly and just going to be harder to run a business in California because you got to follow all these extra things and make sure you're doing it right. So, all right, I guess we're going to another negative thing over in Utah. The concealed firearm permit application is subject to a sudden fee increase. So, effective August 1st of 2017, the Utah concealed firearm permit will increase by more than 50%. So, that's kind of annoying. But you don't think of that from Utah. I thought Utah was a pretty good gun state. But I guess they want to raise their prices, and it's one of those things. It's just, okay, if you got a bunch of money, you think, well, that's just kind of annoying. But if you're someone who's in a low-income area and you're trying to get a gun for personal protection, and you're already going to be spending hundreds of dollars on a gun, and then I don't know if Utah has a training requirement or not, but if they do, you're probably looking at $100 and something for a training class. And then you're looking at whatever it is for the permit, maybe $100 to apply for the permit, and now it's going to be $150. It's like sometimes that makes the difference. Now you might have to wait another 2 months of saving up your money before you have enough to, buy a gun and apply for the permit and get a holster and all the other stuff too, and actually start carrying.
Not everybody is buying just guns to carry around, so that also prohibits people from buying their fourth or fifth gun or another gun or a gun that week, and stops recreational shooting. It stops collecting. It stops people from getting into gunsmithing or just having that hobby, innovating and becoming manufacturers. So it kills the industry completely. It takes it out of society. It's an attempt to take it out of society.
All right, I see someone in the chat talking about Oregon. I think I got that one. Is that the same one? Senate Bill, 719. Oh, okay. I actually have old news because I have it scheduled for a floor vote. So Colt's out there saying in Oregon, Senate Bill 719 passed, now awaiting the governor's signature. And what Senate Bill 719 is so-called extreme risk protection order that could be obtained by a law enforcement officer, family member, or household member in an ex parte hearing to deprive someone of their Second Amendment rights without due process of the law. So that's basically the thing where someone could basically accuse you of saying, hey, this person's dangerous, whatever, a family member or something, and they take away your rights, they come take your guns. And then I think eventually you get to prove that you're a good guy, but it's the complete opposite way around. I mean, you're guilty till proven innocent. And so that's not good. Hopefully the guy will veto it, but I kind of doubt it given Oregon's past. You don't think there's any hope that gets vetoed?
No, there's not a guy. Oregon has a lesbian governor.
Oh. Okay. Well, I'm sorry, I gender assumed.
And she's not likely to veto it.
So yeah, I wasn't holding my breath for that one. That's a bummer. So again, here's the thing with that. Some people might say, yeah, but that's that could be a good thing because, maybe you start going crazy. Your family's going to be the first to know or whatever. Okay, but that's also, you see the same thing when, divorce hearings and stuff. People falsely accuse someone else all the time to try and manipulate and get their way. And so I just see it being misused more often than it's used for an actual good cause.
Any judge will tell you how often they see restraining orders used. So imagine how often this is going to be misused.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, that's the go-to, especially, like I said, especially in divorce stuff. If you're fighting over custody, that's the first thing they do. Get a restraining order, because then that's in there, and then they can use that to be like, well, see, you can't have the kids because I need a restraining order. So, of course, they're going to try and take your guns away, too. But, either way. All right. This is just kind of a an update I wanted to mention. North Dakota permitless carry, it goes into effect August 1st. So if you're in North Dakota, you have constitutional carry as of yesterday. So knock yourself out, go carry your gun, whatever. You don't need a license. However, this is kind of like a advisory or whatever. It's kind of,
if you live in North Dakota, you got bigger problems than whether you can carry a gun.
So the problem is where it's unclear is whether or not like this right extends to carrying a loaded firearm inside a vehicle. Now, under like already North Dakota law allows carrying a loaded firearm in a vehicle basically if you have a valid concealed weapons license. So if you already have a concealed weapons license, then you can carry in a vehicle, but it's unclear if you don't have that license and you're going to start carrying, because of constitutional carry, they may trip you up as soon as you sit down in your car and say that now that right doesn't extend. So they've already did a review, and they're going to try and figure out exactly, like, clarify the issue. But until then, you might want to think twice. That's kind of similar, like in Michigan. We have open carry. You don't need a permit to open carry or anything like that. But your vehicle is considered concealed. So if you have it on your hip and it's out in the open, you're walking through a parking lot, no problem. Everything's fine. As soon as you sit down inside your car, you're now concealed carrying. And since we don't have constitutional carry, you better have a concealed carry permit. So that's something I wanted to mention. Well, I figured I had at least somewhat of an audience here. All right, Massachusetts anti-gun bill heard by committee. So which one's this? Oh, it's similar to the Oregon thing. So this is H3081. Is again an anti-gun extreme risk protection legislation. So I guess what's the date on this one? So as of July 19th, it was heard by the committee. I'm not sure if it passed or not. Let me open up this link here real quick. Let's see. The last action, it says scheduled for hearing 7/18. It hasn't updated the results of that, so maybe they haven't voted on it yet. So, but it's something to keep in mind if you're out there. I guess it is still in committee. They already had the hearing on it, but you could still write to people and say, "Hey, this is dumb." Same reason why it's dumb in Oregon. Man, these are all like negative. Where do we have some good ones here? Let's see. Massachusetts. What?
I was going to say, well, college campus carry passed a long time ago, but now it's instated. And I think it's this coming semester where you're allowed to carry on campus concealed in Texas. They have some community colleges have a year to opt out of that, or they have a year to adjust. I'm sorry, but some colleges also have the option to opt out. But again, if you also want to carry on campus, you have to also let the college know as well that you're going to carry. So it's kind of cool. I mean, for Texas, giving people the right to defend themselves instead of getting massacred.
Right. Did that like just go into effect or something? Because I do remember when that passed. It passed a little bit ago.
I understand this semester. It could be sooner than that. I don't know the exact date. Again, I catch stuff when I catch it, and but it is going into effect, and they're giving the community colleges, I think, a year to a pass on a year before it goes into effect. Community colleges to get them able to adapt or train their security or PD they have assigned to them to understand that that's going to happen. And there are some campuses I understand they can still opt out as well. So it's very interesting and at the same time odd. but it's a good thing. It's a step in the right direction. And down the road, hopefully, they've got the Lone Star gun rights also working at constitutional carry. They're always cracking at it, but it's a tough cookie to crack, man.
Yep. Well, you got to keep plugging away at it. So I got a couple more real quick, and then I'll be done with my stuff here real quick. So Massachusetts actually has a bill, suppressor legalization legislation. So I guess there's two different bills. I'm not sure the difference between the two. It's H763 and H789. I was surprised by this part, is that H763 was sponsored by a Democratic representative from Plymouth, and H789 was sponsored by a Republican representative from Worcester. So, hey, it's actually bipartisan. And it basically would just be, it would legalize firearm suppressors for possession. The last thing I saw on there was it was scheduled for a hearing on the 18th of July. They haven't voted on that yet either. So, but it is, it's at least kind of moving forward. So that'd be cool if they get, suppressors legalized. Obviously, you'd still have to follow the federal stuff. But again, any step in the right direction makes me happy, especially after those first all anti-gun ones. That's a pro-gun one. We'll see what happens. And then in Ohio, pro-gun bill passes House. So this is, this is this one. So House Bill 233, it basically, if a concealed handgun licensee was discovered carrying concealed handgun in a place that's prohibited or restricted, the person's subject to removal from the property, but not guilty of violating the firearm prohibition. And if the person fails to leave upon request or returns within 30 days and violates by carrying a firearm again, then the person's guilty of disorderly conduct, which is a misdemeanor in the 4th degree. So it's kind of like a much less penalty than what it was under current law. So I know there's plenty of people out there, you see the sign at the, movie theater that says, hey, no guns. And you go, that's funny. And you go ahead and watch your movie. Now, the likelihood of getting discovered or whatever, I mean, it's probably pretty rare anyways. But if something were to happen and they asked you to leave, apparently under the current law, you'd be in more trouble. If this passes, you'll be in a little less trouble. So still, I'm not necessarily advocating for breaking laws, but I know that attitude is out there. And if it's not hurting anybody and you're carrying concealed, a sign on the wall is just a sign on the wall. So,
well, real quick, one of those things that I like to point out is one thing the Yankee did in one video is talking about when you're or I think it was a video or a chat, where you're going to carry a little bag with you. You don't want to get in your bag. You're like, hey, let me inspect your bag. All you got to say is, I have my medicine here. And I don't want you. I'm sorry, it's a HIPAA law. I don't want you to know the medications I'm on. It's my privacy. So therefore, you can't inspect my bag and fuck off. And they really can't check your bag. And all them chocolates and sodas you got in there too.
Okay, that's interesting. So, anyways, that's the roundup of all the states. I think a lot of states were, on recess for the summer. That's why there wasn't a lot of stuff passed or moved forward or anything. But, I'll keep an eye on it for next month. We'll see if anything, happened in August, and I'll update you again in September 2nd.